So U.S. energy, looking more closely at the three sectors that comprise, that use energy in the United States. We can see that industrial is 31%, residential and commercial is the biggest at 41%, and then transportation 28%. And hopefully you'll be so dazzled by this, this spinning wheel which is about to occur that you're just going to absorb all this information that I'm about to throw at you. So, are you ready? Oh. So in the industrial section, we can see that there, I mean, just obviously, chemical and, metal mining, all that takes a lot of energy. I won't spend too much time boring you with that. So let's look at more closely at transportation. 28% of all energy in the U.S. goes to transportation. So what are some vehicles that come to mind that might take up fuel?
Airplanes.
Airplanes, good. Anyone else? Trucks? Boats?
Your Ferrari.
My Ferrari, indeed. You can see that cars and light trucks, hopefully you can see that, comprise 60% of all transportation fuel that is used. Airplanes, I think, are 9%. Boats take up a significant percentage. And in the transportation, no surprise, gasoline comprises the majority of the fuel type used in that sector. So let's roll over to residential and commercial. In the residential space, energy is used a great deal in space heating and, water heating. You can see what's happening there. You can see that air conditioning, actually, to my surprise, is only about 8%. But this sector of residential and commercial, as I mentioned, consumes the most energy in the United States. We use natural gas a lot, and we use electricity a lot in residential, which is no surprise. Surprisingly, single-family homes consume a huge amount of energy compared to multi-family dwellings, probably like a lot of us, including myself, live in, and then mobile homes consume comparatively little. On the commercial side, I'm not going to bore you too much with this other than to say that a lot of the space heating, as you would imagine, takes up a lot of energy. So let's move on from there and look at energy consumption generally over the last 30, 35 years. You can see that it's kind of been steadily on the upswing, but it's been more or less the same for the last 30 years, which I thought was pretty interesting. In looking more closely at renewables, we see, as I mentioned before, renewables only comprise about 7% of U.S. energy consumption, and biomass makes up the vast majority of that. And what Basel had alluded to before is that renewables there's no kind of set projections, but what I have read is that, renewables are expected to grow much faster than U.S. energy consumption in general it's actually supposed to increase at a rate that's 4 times faster than general energy consumption. But even with that rapid acceleration in growth, by 2030 it's still, that renewable energy percentage, which is 7%, would only increase to 8%. So there's a lot of different statistics that you can throw around. Justin was talking about mandates that are calling for 25 or 20-some-odd% of renewables by that time. So there's really a lot of debate about that, is my point. This is just historically how our energy consumption has gone up. The green line is going straight up, which, as our country grows, obviously we're going to be demanding more energy, but actually our per capita use is going down, which seems to suggest that renewables are having some effect, and that the average person is actually using less than they did before. And then this is sort of to leave you on a depressing note. You can see that coal, this is just projections up until 2035. You can see that coal, natural gas, nuclear, and gasoline are all basically projected to stay at about the same levels as they are now. You can see this liquid biofuels, this is ethanol and so on, but you can see what a small sliver that is and what a small, as I was mentioning, growth rate it's going to experience. And then renewables, it's increasing, but not as much as you might expect. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren, who's going to talk more about perceptions of the U.S. green tech.
Thank you very much. So we've talked a lot about the perceptions in Sweden, and so I won't spend too much time on this, but as you know, eco-consciousness is a way of life in Sweden, and from childhood, people are still instilled with an eco-consciousness mindset, and also that dichotomy between the love of nature and love of technology is really prevalent there. So you're going to see a lot of differences in the United States. Sweden tends to be much more preventative in their, both in their consumption and also in their government policies and taxations when it comes to green technology and environmental issues. And we'll see in a moment that the United States tends to be more reactionary. They also have a lot of government support, as we also just discussed. This is not something very reactionary for them. Support for green tech and support for environmental issues has been around and prevalent in the 70s and 80s. In the United States, the perception of green tech and what motivates the United States tends to be a lot more capitalistic than in Sweden. People are much more interested in the economic issues behind it, and a Green Living Pulse study that I looked at, it basically surveyed 30,000 Americans that identified themselves as what they would consider green consumers and asked them what motivates them to purchase green products, and 59% said it had to do more with the economy, and 8% responded that it had to do with the environment. In addition, in that study, I don't have it on the slide, but I think it's interesting when people are asked, why they might want to use renewable energy or work to save energy. They, I think about 70% stated that it was in order to cut costs, like their utility bills and things like that, where 25% said that it was about the environment. So you can see a big difference there in just the nature of the United States perception. I discussed a little bit about how it tends to be more reactionary, and I thought it was interesting what Peter, is it Salamar? Salamar mentioned that in Sweden they're lush with engineers and they have this love of technology, whereas in the United States, just things that I've learned from studying in the HR field is that we tend to be more reactionary. We need engineers. That's what we're looking for now. So now the government is putting in programs in high school, and private corporations are working to, like Boeing and really high-tech organizations are working to support the education and instill love of engineering in high school students, and also help them go to engineering school and pay for them so that ultimately they will pursue and fill these jobs which the government and private corporations are now seeing as important in our future, and a huge gap for the United States. So moving on, in looking at the U.S. perceptions of green technology, I think, for everyone it was important for us to try to identify things that would be helpful in our projects in particular. And so understanding the consumer values, I think, is really important. Knowing that both consumers and, when we're talking about business-to-business marketing, organizations hold these same values. So I think you can really use them if you keep them in mind. Few are going to pay extra for greener products in the United States, and there's also kind of this pre-existing notion that the quality of green products might be less effective. So you really need to do a lot to prove that it's going to be an improvement on their existing technology. Convenience. Americans won't be inconvenienced in order to do this, and availability, they're not going to go out of their way to purchase the green products. They need to be brought to them. So I developed, through my research, there's more, the report itself tends to be more fact-based, but I thought for the